Hey, besties and bosses. Happy Tuesday. I'm excited to hang with you and chat with you today. I'm a few minutes late. I'm gonna be real honest with y'all. I am a few minutes late because I've been trying to mess with this new apartment and the lighting in the backdrop. For any of you who go live, you'll understand what I'm talking about. I had my setup down for years and now I'm like trying to figure out how not to look like a ghost in my desk setting. So fun silliness behind the scenes. If you're joining in, say hi, let me know how you're doing, let me know how your week was. I'm excited to chat. So today's conversation, what I want to dive into is the question I framed here is, are you unintentionally pushing clients away? And some simple shifts you can make to book more paying clients. So just like dive right in and say hi, say all the highs. Since I'm a few minutes late, we'll make sure we dive right in. So something I notice and something that comes up for my clients a lot, and the reason a lot of clients, what they bring to calls and what we're chatting about a lot on the back end in my one-on-one work is we're oftentimes, they're coming to the calls and they're feeling like, hey, I'm doing all the things. I'm like following all the strategy. I'm doing all the things right. I'm like doing my mindset work. And yet I feel like I should be booking more clients, or I feel like I have this potential to make more money and I don't understand what's going on. Raise your hand if you've ever been there. I think it's a pretty common thing. And oftentimes, obviously, there are multiple reasons, why you might not be booking clients. There are multiple reasons why, strategy might not be in place or why mindset stuff might be going on. But something I find that's really surprisingly common is how often when we're taking a look and we're peeling the layers back, and this has been really common over the last few weeks, I'd say with clients in particular, always funny when I pick these topics and then it's like everyone wants to chat about this, is how often and how common it is to unintentionally push clients away in your business. And I think this comes up for a few different reasons. I think there's some mindset stuff and some reasons that this happens. I also think we'll talk some strategy. I think there's some strategy teachings that get a little misunderstood and can also cause entrepreneurs to unintentionally push clients away. So I want to dive into those two pieces and also just give you examples of what this looks like, because so often when I tell my clients like, hey, I love you, but do you realize you are quite literally pushing clients and money away? They don't even realize it. It's not like people are doing this on purpose. So I want to just give some examples of what this looks like so it's easier for you to spot in your own business. Let me see here. Courtney says, hey Courtney. Stephanie says, hey Kim. Hi, Miss Stephanie. Tiffany says, hey, and you're saying hi to each other. I love y'all for that. And Courtney says, well, this sounds familiar. I just love y'all. And so nice to have you all here. So much fun. So let's talk, I'm trying to think what feels like an easier way to dive into this, what this looks like or why this happens. Let's talk about why this happens first. Then let's talk about some of the strategy pieces and some examples of what this looks like so you can kind of identify this for yourself. And then just some really easy things, because I want you to be able to walk away from this with some easy shifts for yourself. And just want to give you a reframe on one of these strategy pieces and a reframe on even how to look at this so that you're not blocking those clients and that money. And hey, everyone else is joining in. So I think this happens for a few reasons, but something I notice for a lot of my clients are high achievers. If you're here, I'm sure you're a high achiever. They're driven, they're heart-centered, and all of these personality types, come with a lot of blessings, and it's kind of like we have the dark and light side of our personality types. And a lot of my clients also come up around enoughness, feeling good enough, wanting to feel worthy. And I think that's part of that high achiever personality type. I'm a high achiever. I fall into this where we derive so much of our sense of self-worth and self-esteem from our doingness and our results. And so in business, how I see this sometimes play out is sometimes then it's sort of like a few things can happen. One, there can be this really big concern. It's always like the marker moves for like when we're enough or when you're enough to charge money, or like that imposter syndrome. It's like that imposter syndrome just keeps moving forward and forward in terms of like when you're actually qualified and a valid expert that can get people those results. And if you're a bit of a high achiever and you're someone who's like got a lot of integrity, which I know you do if you're heart-centered, what I see sometimes happen when people are talking to potential clients, whether it's in their copy or in their sales call, is it's almost like there's this fear or this worry that What if I can't deliver? What if I'm not good enough? What if I don't have enough expertise yet? What if there's something I'm missing? What if there's something I don't know? Or what if I'm promising something and they're not going to get the results they want? Or if someone pays all this money, they're not going to be happy, or they're not going to like this, or I'm not going to be able to help them get all of the things they want. Let me know if you have ever had any of those thoughts or concerns, and if so, I will just tell you are very, very normal and human. When those thoughts and worries and stories and concerns are coming up, what is a really easy thing to do is to start getting into self-protective mode. And so what I see in high achievers is there's a really sneaky way this happens, in which you're doing all the things, you're doing the practical strategy to book clients, but then you're kind of putting up this wall where it's like, I'm just gonna put up as much protection and as much wall between me and a potential client, so I protect myself from ever having to feel that rejection, or from that feeling of like I can't deliver, or from ever having to put myself in that situation where someone's unhappy on the other side and I have to deal with that situation, that disappointment, that discomfort. Let me know if this is making sense. And so what happens then is, unintentionally, people will do, it's like this, right? It's like, come on, no, go away. Come on, no, go away. And this happens all over the place, whether it's energetically or quite literally in your copy or on your sales calls and your sales conversations. And I'll break down some examples of what that looks like. So I think, again, super normal as to why this happens. I think another reason this happens is, again, another form of self-protection. Is quite literally like a fear of rejection and a fear of people, what if people say no? What if I can't handle it? Or what if I have clients who are really challenging and I can't handle the client load? Raise your hand if any of these are resonating. I think it's helpful. I mean, you don't have to raise your hand or out yourself if you don't want to, obviously, but I think it's just helpful to normalize for everyone if any of you have ever experienced this, whether it's now or on the replay. And I think it's really helpful to start to identify, are any of these things coming up for me? Do I have a concern that I'm not going to be able to deliver? Do I have a concern that I'm not good enough? Do I have a worry that, maybe I don't know enough, or I'm going to get a client where I'm not going to know how to serve them or how to, get them those results that I'm talking about? Am I really worried about the results I'm promising? Am I worried about, do I not want someone to say no or not want to get rejected? Am I worried about having a difficult client? Are any of these things coming up? And if so, I would really have a check-in, because there's a very, 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 very good chance you're doing a little bit of this. And when you're doing this is really confusing on the potential client side. We have to think from the lens, from the shoes of someone who's thinking about investing in a product or a service, especially if you're selling something that's a high ticket product or service. This is something I say all the time. If you're selling something, whatever you're selling, you have to be more confident in what you're selling and delivering than the person you're selling to. And so if you think about selling something really at any price point, but particularly those high ticket items like many of you in this group are selling, if you have this concern or worry about anything we just talked about, what's happening is you are doing this, and the person on the other side, the person you're selling to, they really need you to be this beacon of I got you. If you invest with me, you are so safe because I've got you. And if you're not feeling that way and you're not articulating that, what you're doing is this. You're going through the motions. I'm putting out the offer, I'm having the sale call, I'm doing the follow-up, whatever those motions are, but you're doing a little bit of this because people can pick up when there's a part of you that's I kind of sort of secretly hope you don't book. And I'm going to talk about this one more layer in a second, but I want to read this comment. Courtney says, yes, all of this I've experienced. Concerns over not being able to deliver enough for the money, and that they're more business savvy than I am, so they'll be disappointed with my work. Thank you for sharing that so openly, because I promise you, Courtney, everyone in this group would raise their hand to that. I think it's such a common thing. This is not necessarily the topic of today's live, but I know I've talked about this before. So the idea of how we tend to pedestal potential clients, put them up on a pedestal and think exactly what Courtney's saying. They're more business savvy. They know more than me. They're better than me. We do the same thing. People, I think, do this in dating, right? That person is so amazing and shining that we put them up on a pedestal. And as soon as we put people up on a pedestal, we're not seeing eye to eye, right? And I think in business and in sales, and especially for those of you who are having any kind of service-based business, we don't want to like knock people down. It's not about, we're not like knocking people down, but the more you can see eye to eye and be more of that outreaching hand that's like, I have got you. Your money is safe with me. Your investment is safe with me. I have got you. I have got you. I have got you. The safer someone's going to feel on the other side. The more we're putting people up on a pedestal or, you know, insert any of those fears or concerns, the more we're doing this. Let me know if that's making sense. So what I see happen, and this is what I find really, really fascinating, is I think it's a little, again, insidious for my high achievers, because a lot of times when we get on a call, like they are doing all the things. I mean, most of you are, if you're driven, it's not like you're not showing up and taking action. And so what I see happen is it's like layers of protection are getting baked into the sales process, in terms of protection to protect themselves from that rejection, from letting someone down, from not feeling good enough. And all of those little layers of protection are basically little bumpers that people, like little hurdles, all their potential clients have to jump over. Tiffany says, I feel pretty good about how I serve my clients. When I run into trouble as a sales calls, I feel that I'm not good enough at sales to convince a client to book with me. Well, I'm gonna come back to that because I have a thought on that one, Tiffany. Thank you for sharing that. Because I think there's some good juicy stuff in there. But I think what happens is we'll take a look. So I was just talking with a client about this last week. We were taking a look. She's brilliant at what she does, but she's got this absolute concern that, you know, someone's gonna hire her, they're not gonna get the results they want, everything we're talking about here, right? Where there's like some of those fears coming up. And so as we were taking a look through her copy on her website, the free call she was putting out, even the way she was pitching herself in her sales conversation, it was like all along the way, all of these little bumpers, all of these little hurdles have been put up, which were basically like, I am basically trying to convince the person I'm talking to not to work with me. And so I'll give some like tangible examples here so you can see this in yourself. Like the sales page, instead of selling her work, was really, here are basically all the reasons you shouldn't work with me. And if you still want to work with me, and if you're still interested, like here are all the reasons like you should not hire me, which can be a helpful sales strategy. But in this case, it was absolutely like, can you prove to me that you still want to work with me after all of this? It's sort of like, let me give a better example here. It's sort of like if you've ever seen, kids will do this sometimes when they're feeling insecure, where they like act out. And it's sort of like kids will be like, if I'm horrible, will you still love me? Anyone who has kids might have ever experienced this, where it's like kids have a tantrum or they just act kind of awful. And it's to test like, will you still love them in some cases? And so it was sort of like the sales page and some of the sales conversation when we were breaking it down, we're quite literally like, if I show you my worst, if I like show you all the other options that are out there essentially, and you still make it past all of this, then we can talk about working together. And that's an extreme case, but it's really fascinating to see how as someone who's in the business operating shoes, not even realize like writing sales pages, having sales calls, I think it's really easy to not even realize what you're doing is essentially like, here are all the other people you should possibly hire. Here are all the other things you should possibly consider. Here are all the reasons not to work with me. And if you still want me, if you pass all these tests, then I feel safe. And then it's safe for you to work with me. When really, the job is reversed. If you're a service provider and you're selling, your job is to say, here are all the reasons you should work with me. Here are all the reasons I've got you. Here are all the reasons you can feel safe, because I already feel safe, so that we can work together. And so I think it's just starting to notice, and let me know if this is making sense, it's just starting to notice, are you putting up those like hurdles to create that safety for yourself, when really the reverse needs to happen, create safety for the person you're talking to. Stephanie says, heck, I know some grown people that do that, LOL. Oh, I mean, absolutely. I think we use dating analogies all the time. I think this happens in dating a lot too, right? When I first became single, so I was in a relationship for 10 years that went all sorts of dramatic, spiraling, you know, whatever you want to call it. This was probably 7-8 years ago now at this point. And when I first became single, I had never been single as an adult. It was fascinating to, like, looking back, like, just to witness my behavior. And I felt so not safe dating. And I so cognitively wanted to be in a relationship and emotionally wasn't ready for one. And I did exactly what we're talking about. I did this. Whereas like, I'm practically showing up on dates. I'm like doing the things. And then I'm wondering why I'm not in a relationship. And the reason I wasn't really in a relationship is I was doing exactly what we're talking about. And it was sort of like, if I behave at my worst, if I kind of like show you all my worst, will you still stick around? Because that's the only way I'm gonna feel safe in this. And it's kind of hysterical to look back on, I love you past him, at that behavior, but it's exactly what we're talking about here. This happens in business all of the time when we're not feeling secure in ourselves, right? That's why I was doing that dating. That happens to business owners as well. If you are not feeling secure in your work, if you're not feeling secure in your business, if you're not feeling secure and really sold on what it is you're delivering, it's sort of like if I throw out all these things, if I behave my worst, again, this is subconsciously, I don't think anyone is doing this consciously, while I'm practically showing up, it's like, I'll go on the dates, but if I'm kind of my worst, if you still like me, then you pass the test and it's safe for us to work together. And I think, again, the invitation here is to start to recognize if that's happening, because in sales, your job, quite honestly, is completely the reverse. Your job is to build up that safety and trust for the person you're working with, because for them, to think about what it's like to invest. If any of you have ever invested, it can be pretty scary. And it can be, like there's all sorts of things that come up. And so the more safety you can create for someone, the easier it is for them to work with you. So if you need that safety, your job is to create that safety outside of your business so you can show up really sold and solid and feeling safe in your work so that you can create that for your potential clients. Let me know if that's making sense, y'all. The other thing I find happens, and this is the strategy piece I want to talk about, and then we'll kind of pull it all together, but something else I see happen, and I think the reason it happens is everything we're talking about, right? Like we're like worried about being disappointed, or worried you're gonna get rejected, or worried you won't be able to deliver, or worried you won't be able to like live up to those expectations, or you're like, maybe my offer isn't as good as I think it is, and they're gonna find out. Insert all the reasons that you might kind of subconsciously not really want to book a client. Strategically, in the online space, I mean, in business in general, we hear a lot about like ideal clients and what it means to have an ideal client and how important it is to know who your ideal client is, right? Like, I don't think anyone has not heard the conversation around ideal clients and around niching and how important that is. And like, you really need to know who you're for and who you serve, right? Like, give me some praise hands. I'm sure you all know. I don't think there's anyone who doesn't know what I'm talking about with ideal clients. What I find with the whole ideal client conversation in terms of what we're talking about is this becomes a piece of business strategy, of business foundation that unintentionally it's sort of like it becomes the scapegoat. And what I find happens is people misinterpret ideal client for perfect client that doesn't have any flaws and is going to show up and make me feel better about myself and be a like human without any problems that is like amazing unicorn of a person so that I don't have to be uncomfortable as a business owner. And I love everyone here. I love all of my clients. I love all of you, and I'm going to be the bearer of bad news. If you are in the business of serving other humans and you are in the business of being a service provider, that just doesn't exist. And that is a really, really funny, clever way to self-protect and to kind of push clients away where it's like, yeah, but they're not an ideal client because they don't fit all of these like hundreds of things. It's sort of like when you're dating and you like come up with the perfect human on paper and you're like, well, I can't date this awesome person because they don't fit this like checklist. And it's like, but your checklist doesn't exist because you're looking to date a human. It's the same in business. Ideal client does not mean perfect human without flaws that is meant to show up and allow you to be perfectly comfortable. Your job as a service provider is to help people solve their problems, right? Like that's your job as a business owner. If people are coming to you with their problems, your ideal client has problems. That is why they are coming to you. If they are perfectly shiny unicorn of a human with zero problems, quite frankly, they don't need your services. They don't need to hire you, which means you're creating this like situation that doesn't exist. Like, I want a perfect shiny human with no problems. And also I want them to have enough problems to hire me and like be exactly perfect and execute in all the ways to get those results so that I don't have to be uncomfortable. We all see how like this is like said with love, but so ridiculous. And this is the piece that I think is like just really interesting to start to look at. Am I confusing what an ideal client is? Am I confusing what this means? Am I confusing the whole idea of niching an ideal client and using this as something to protect myself and to try to feel comfortable in business so I don't have to feel discomfort, so I don't have to be disappointed, so I don't have to feel any of the things, the fears, all the things I don't want, so that I can do this in my business. Does that make sense, y'all? I can give some more examples here, but let me know if that concept is making sense. So what I mean by this is, when we think about an ideal client, really what that means is like, who are the people you serve in terms of like, what's that problem you solve for people? What's the solution you deliver? And like, what type of people have those problems? And like, what are they going through? It does not mean ideal in terms of like a perfect human, because I mean, everyone's perfectly imperfect, right? But it's really just like, thinking about like, who's the perfect person who's going to most benefit from your work, that you can best show up, like you can solve their problems. Like you're going to be the best investment for them to solve their problems. Really, that's what we mean by ideal client. And then like, what are the psychographics? Like what's going on in their brain in terms of like, how are they thinking about that problem? How are they stressing about it? What things do they desire? Like, what are they dreaming about? Like, what are they going through as it relates to that problem you help them with? When we're talking about an ideal client, that's the stuff you want to know, because that's how you can communicate. Like, hey, I'm the one who can help you. You're my ideal client. I'm your ideal solution. I can help you put that fire out. It does not mean, because I think this is where it gets twisted. I think people hear ideal client, they're like, so this person, does all of these things this way. They get these kinds of results. They're like, it's like when we try to make a checklist for dating, and it's like, no. That's not the thing. Like, of course, there are standards you want to have in business. You want someone who's going to, pay your fees and sign the contract and show up on time to appointments and all those kinds of things. But I think it can really get twisted, and this again becomes this thing where it's like, I'm just going to try to create walls and roadblocks and impossible standards to protect myself. I'm saying myself, but like to protect yourself in business so that I don't have to feel uncomfortable, so I don't have to get rejected. And I think the win here is seeing, like, it's just starting to dismantle this and see, like, what if it's just okay? Like, can you just be okay where it's like, I might get rejected from time to time? Can it just be okay that I might have, like, if I'm dealing with clients who have challenges and problems, it might be uncomfortable from time to time. They might be frustrated from time to time, not because you're not good at what you do, but because that is the human nature when you're problem solving and you're shifting and you're growing and you're working through things. If you're a service provider helping someone with something, it's a very good chance you're gonna have people who are frustrated from time to time. It's sort of like, what's the saying, like, don't poke a bear and then expect it not to like roar or bite or whatever the thing is. It's like, if you're a service provider helping people with problems, it's like, don't help people with problems and expect someone then not to show up with problems, right? Like, that doesn't even make actual sense. And yet I think from a self-protective place, it's like, well, if I can just find the person without problems, but who also wants to pay me to solve their problem, then I will be golden. And that's how I think so many people push away so many amazing potential clients. So same client, we were talking about this last week, and we were actually breaking down some of the calls she had recently. We realized there were so many amazing, like really great fit clients, but because she had this kind of like impossible standard for who she was meant to work with and like what they needed to do and be, and like the place they needed to be at, so she could almost like guarantee they were going to get the like perfect shiny results, she had ruled out and literally told people that they weren't a good fit for her work. She had literally ruled out all of these people. And it was really fascinating to see, because there is no way in hell she did that on purpose. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like, I mean, on purpose subconsciously, but there's no way consciously she was doing that on purpose. And I think it's, again, just a really interesting thing for you to take a look at. Like, am I pushing those people away? Like, you might not quite literally be telling people, hey, we're not a fit, I can't work with you, but you might also be doing that. I think it's really fascinating to see, because again, I think that's a big conversation in our online space. Like, not every client is a fit. And I know I talk about that a lot. I always say, if you get on a call with me and we're not a fit, I'm going to tell you that. And I always will lovingly tell people that. But there's a really big difference between you're not a fit for the problem I solve and the work I do, versus you're not a fit because I'm so worried that I'm not good enough or I can't deliver or that you're going to reject me, that I'm finding, like, I have these impossible standards for what a fit is. And like 1% of the humans fit that. Let me know if this is making sense, y'all. And if you have questions. So I thought I'd share, I was giving that example, I thought I would share a couple other ways I see this happen, and then I want to hear your questions. And then I'm just seeing here, I think then one of the things I want to talk about is like just some simple ways to reframe this. So we talked about having those impossible standards. I think this is one of the most common ways this happens. Take a look at like, what are your standards? And look, like, to be very, very clear, this is not a conversation about not having high standards. Please have high standards in your business. We are all for high standards, absolutely. And check in with, do I have high standards or do I have impossible standards? Those are two very, very different things. I have incredibly high standards for myself, for my clients, for my business, but I don't have impossible standards. I'm not expecting anyone I work with to be a perfect human. I am going to hold them to a high standard. And I think there's a very, very big difference there. Just like I have high standards for my relationship, I do not expect my relationship, I don't expect myself or my partner to be perfect in that. I do hold us to a high standard. And those are two very, very different things. So same here. What I would check in with is, do you have high standards or do you have impossible standards? Are you creating impossible standards as a way to self-protect, and are you pushing people away as a result? So that's the first place I would check in. Courtney says, good distinction, high versus impossible standards. I'm so glad that makes sense. Yes, exactly. The difference between high versus impossible standards. You know, I think this is, I think we could you can really use this distinction in almost everywhere in life. I keep using the relationship example, but I think the same goes for those of you who are really into fitness or eating well, right? There's a really big difference between high standards with how you train or how you work out versus impossible standards, right? High standards, that's what we want to hold ourselves to. Impossible standards is where we get into things like eating disorders or, you know, injuries because you're training too hard. Does that make sense? And so it's the same thing in business. High standards, great thing. Impossible standards, that's where that pressure, which I know we've talked about in this group a lot, comes from, and that's also where we start pushing people away. So another area to take a look at is when you're looking at like high versus impossible standards, take a look at, are you overqualifying your potential clients? So this is kind of the same thing. We're like, absolutely qualify clients, absolutely have those standards, absolutely. I am all for various levels of, you know, people make the joke about the red rope in terms of having that, you know, that red rope or that velvet rope and those boundaries, and kind of having a bouncer in terms of who can work with you and who can access your time and protecting that time. Abso-freaking-lutely. And check in with, are you creating impossible hurdles or overqualifying your potential clients? This is another way I see people push clients away, especially at the start, because I think this is, I'm gonna kind of like go off on a tangent here, but it's very relevant to what we're talking about. I think in the online space, you know, depending on like where you're consuming content and who you're listening to or who you're looking at, you're seeing people at different stages of business. And so at different stages of business, people start to put in more and more barriers to work with them because their time is less and less limited, and there is more and more things that are pulling and vying on their time, right? Like when you're starting in business, you tend to have less of a client load, less of a team, less things vying for your attention. The further and longer you are in business, you have more things pulling at you. And so the further along in business, there are times where you do want to put in more qualifications, because it's really important to protect your time, because you just literally can't say yes to everything. But depending on what stage you're at business, I think it's, because I know there's a lot of teachings out there where it's like all the different things you want to put in to qualify and pre-qualify your clients. This kind of goes back to that ideal client conversation. And those are all really great things. It's not like those teachings are bad. It's not like pre-qualifying clients is a bad thing. And I think it's really important, you want to be mindful of like, where am I in business? And is this serving me? Am I pre-qualifying clients because I need to weed out a lot of people so that, you know, my time is limited and I'm inundated with client work and I need to put up a little bit of a red rope? Or am I doing that thing? I don't know if you all have ever seen this. You ever walked by a club where it's like they have the bouncer and they have the red rope up and they have a line outside the club, and you know inside there's like two fucking people? I used to work at clubs back in the day, back in my actress days. So I know how this goes. It's to like create demand. You know what I'm talking about? Where they like create the line down the block and then you finally get in and there's like 3 people chilling at the bar and you're like, what in the actual heck? that's not what that's pushing clients away, right? In your business. Like, and I think it's taught that like, well, that creates demand. That makes people think you're really in demand. That's also like really manipulative, and what you're doing is you're creating a false sense of like what's on the other side of the red velvet rope, and it's a way to push clients away. And so I think something here is just checking in with like, am I overqualifying clients in terms of like, am I putting so many hurdles up because I'm worried like unless I find the perfect client, I'm not gonna be able to deliver? And am I checking in with where I'm at in my business? Do I need to overqualify to this degree, or do I need to make it a little easier for people to say yes? And just really checking in with that, because I think that's just another way people push, like they do this, right? And push clients away. Let me know if that one makes sense. I'll give an example of that, because I did that. I'll be very, very honest. I did that my first year in business. I was taught about pre-qualifying clients. And again, pre-qualifying clients is a good thing. I am not saying that is a bad idea or a bad strategy. However, I had been taught about like how important that was and all the things you need to do to like pre-qualify clients. And so I had like I had an application, you had to get on a call. First you had to like submit to like get the application, to get approved for the call, to get the questionnaire. It was like all of these things. And I had like 2 clients, y'all. And I remember the coach I was working with at the time was like, why do we have so many hurdles? I was literally pushing clients away and making it really hard for them to hire me. And this was coming from the place of, I don't know, someone had taught me that. Like someone had said that was a really good way to do things because you're supposed to pre-qualify. Like it wasn't even coming from a place of anything other than I had just heard that's what you're supposed to do. And so I offer that here because sometimes it's not even a mindset thing. Sometimes it's just, there's a lot of information online, and sometimes when you're consuming content or information, you don't always realize, like, it's not that it's bad information, it's just information that doesn't necessarily serve you at this particular point in time in business, and really starting to be mindful of that. So you're not doing this by putting up all those hurdles for people or putting up extra roadblocks when really you want to remove all the roadblocks and have like a really nice smooth road that people can just like drive through into your business. Does that make sense? So that's just another way I see that happen. And then this other piece we were talking about that I was sharing with my client, talking yourself out of work. So this is another way this just shows up in terms of pushing clients away, and we kind of talked about where that comes from. But this is something, and this comes, I think, a little from that ideal client conversation we were talking about, but also just all the insecurities we were talking about. I would really invite you to start to look at, are you literally talking yourself out of work? So I see this happen on sales conversations and in follow-ups a lot. So in sales conversations, someone will, see one sip of water, y'all. Does anybody else like gummy bears? I had like a whole handful of gummy bears before I went live, and I have like dry gummy bear throat now. So TMI, but that's what's going on over here. So, but something I noticed, because a lot of times on calls with my clients, we'll kind of dissect what's happening on their sales calls and their follow-up process to either learn, so, you know, we can see like where the opportunities for growth are, just kind of what's going on as they're in that process. And so what I see happen, just kind of what we're talking about in terms of how clients get pushed away, and something to be mindful of is that talking yourself out of work. And so I will see, we'll break down a call, and it's like this example I gave you of the client I was chatting with last week, where it's like the call is going great, the client is a perfect fit, and because of those insecurities, what happens is it's really easy to start talking yourself out of work, to start putting in the hurdles, and to start having those, whether it's like, well, but okay, I'm doing an example here, but it's like, but are you looking for this? Or like starting to get like really nitpicky about like scheduling or details, or like trying to find the one thing they want that you don't serve. And it's really fascinating how this happens. And suddenly the whole conversation becomes about all the reasons you're not a good fit, instead of, and I just like want you to see, like, if this ever happens to you, like how the mindset, the reason this happens is because you're doing this. You're trying so hard to protect yourself from not taking on a client who's not a good fit, and how this pushes away people. And so when your mindset's that way, the whole conversation, the whole sales conversation, the whole follow-up process, it's like your brain is just scanning for like, well, but just I just need that evidence. Just tell me the thing I can't do. Just tell me the thing that isn't a fit. And while I am so about integrity and so not suggesting anyone here, say they can do work that they're not qualified for, that is a very different approach than getting on a sales call where you're open-minded and you're really listening to what do they actually need support with, and how you specifically can help them with what you offer, and then letting them decide if that's a fit. So maybe I can give an example for myself here. So many of you have been hanging out and you know my work. I coach clients one-on-one. I help them with clarity, mindset, strategy, and action. We take a look at clarity of their business model and their processes, their mindset, the strategy around their marketing and sales, and then the action they're taking. Now, someone might get on the phone with me. I get people on the phone with me where it would be really easy if I was coming from this mindset of I want to just push people away and I'm just really scared and I don't want to like all the things I'm worried about. And someone could get on the phone with me, lots of times business owners need support with lots of things. And if I was feeling insecure, it'd be really easy for me to have a conversation, be like, oh, well, what you actually need is you need, I don't know, Facebook ad support, and let me tell you all the ways I can't help you with Facebook ads, and let me tell you all the ways that let's say you're, I'm trying to think of a good example here. Actually, I had a conversation with someone today who's a writer, and let me tell you all the ways I can't help you with your writing. And it's that doesn't really serve anyone. That's just me being really defensive and scared and insecure and trying to protect myself. That's not even coming from a place of integrity, because I don't even know what the person's actually looking for. Versus, and just so you can kind of see the shift here, having a conversation where it's I'm actually listening and trying to understand what this person needs support with, and then letting them know in terms of what they need support with, how I specifically would be able to help them with that. So same conversation, I might be able to help this person where it's I can actually see oh, you have zero focus and zero clarity on your business strategy and your mindset's getting in your way. I can help you clean up both of those things and create a sales process and have you help you get out of your own way so you can show up and sell more. Could have been the same conversation, but if I'm listening from that lens, I'm not even worried about all the other things that maybe they need that I can't help. I'm just paying attention to what is the problem I can solve, and then having that conversation with someone. And I think that's let me know if that example, because I just this is an example I had pre-planned. I want to make sure that example makes sense. And I think seeing that difference is really important in your sales conversations and when you're in your follow-ups, because one is, I'm just trying to figure out all the things I can't do and tell you that, so that you can't possibly be mad at me if you just still decide to say yes, right? That's the kid who's if I just throw a tantrum and I do all the bad things, will you still love me? Or if you're dating, that's well, if I just throw out all my worst qualities, will you still like me? Versus, let me show up and just be myself and see if we get along on a date. And not have so many expectations. Versus, let me get on a sales call and listen to what it is you need support with, and then let you know these are the things I specifically can help you with and serve you through. And let's see if that's a fit. Do you see how those are two different things, and how one, you can talk to the same person, it could be this similar conversation, but one approach has you just push people away and it's just screening because of self-protection, and the other is more just an open, inviting conversation where it's so many more people you'll see are those ideal clients. Let me know if that's making sense. You all are very, very quiet. So I hope that is making sense, because I cannot tell you what a difference this makes. That reframe and that shift alone, if you can go into a call and think about, instead of how am I going to self-protect and how am I going to worry about not being disappointed or booking the wrong client or having a situation that feels uncomfortable. Instead, how can I just be curious and listen? And how can I see what is my personal solution? What's the thing that I can offer, and offer that? I think you will be amazed at how different your sales conversations and follow-ups go, and how different your offers are. Because, and again, I'm just going to use a couple client examples. When we were taking a look, we were even looking at the entry, kind of, a lot of, I recommend this to a lot of clients, but a lot of entrepreneurs, you give some sort of free call or free experience before working with someone. It was really fascinating to see, this is what I mean by the whole strategy was right. But how to see even the call topic that was being used was really a call topic to essentially screen misfit clients, versus we just reframed and shifted, like what's the call that actually helps serve and help people have a really great experience and understand how you can support them. And so I think it's just interesting, like if you can just start to take this lens through your work, just starting to see like where are all the places unintentionally I am putting up those walls to try to protect myself and I'm pushing people away, and where are all the places I can break down those walls and start to invite more people in and start to be more curious and start to just really focus on how can I show up and serve, and how can I show up and focus on like what's the solution I deliver to that problem. And you don't need to worry about the rest of the noise. And how can I start to see ideal client as a person who has a problem that I know how to solve. All right, let's see. Courtney says, I absolutely said things I can't do because I want to be transparent, but in reality, I wasn't listening to what they actually needed. It's exactly, I love you, Courtney, for being so open about that, because I think it's so helpful for everyone. I think it's exactly that. That's like the perfect distinction. So thank you for that. Kind of bringing it back to that. That is the difference, y'all. So the difference isn't, of course, be transparent. Do not promise work you cannot do. If someone, I have people ask me like, can you help me with Facebook ads? And I will always tell them very transparently, I can speak to Facebook ads. I have lots of clients who use Facebook ads. But don't hire me as a Facebook ad expert. Like that's not what you want to spend money on. Or if someone's like, well, I want to work with you, but like I don't want to do any mindset work into strategy. Like that's something where I'm like, it's not that I can't do that, I just won't, and you shouldn't fucking hire me if you don't want to talk mindset work. Like you'll hate working with me. And so I think things like that, it's like, of course, be transparent. Of course, be in integrity with the work you do. But I think what Courtney's saying, and this is the difference, is when we're not really listening because we're feeling insecure, because we're worried, we're not going to be able to deliver, because of all the things we were talking about earlier, what happens is the listening gets tuned out. You're listening to your own head instead of the person talking to you. And so someone will be saying something and what you hear is something that you feel like you need to respond and you need to self-protect with, here are all the things I can't do. And that transparency becomes, it's going on the date and like, let me just tell you all the things that are wrong with me. And if you still like me, we should date. Like that's the transparency. Courtney, I know that's not what you're doing, but like that's the example there versus let me show up on the date, get out of my own head, listen to the person in front of me and just have a conversation. That's always going to be the best date, right? Same in sales conversations. Can I show up and actually listen and respond to what's happening in front of me instead of, can I listen to the worries in my own head where I feel like now I have to be transparent by spewing out all of my insecurities in a hopes that then someone will still like me. And Courtney, I'm not saying that's what you were doing at all, but I think that's a really great, like you gave me just a little piece there to play with, just kind of show everyone that difference. So I think that's just the big piece there. And this is where mindset work comes in, y'all, because it's like we can see strategically, it's, I think, such a simple shift and reframe for everyone here. And mindset wise, I think then it comes back to like, what do you need to do? What mindset work do you need to do to be really in your power and to believe that you are good at what you do, you are good enough, and so that you can show up on calls or in follow-ups or in your marketing or in your copy as someone who is listening, as someone who wants to have that open door to invite people in, instead of someone who feels like they need to have all the roadblocks and walls up and try to protect themselves, where it's like, if you can make it through my 14 tests, then we can finally work together. And I think really the reframe there is like, how can I make it as easy as possible for people to say yes to working with me? And of course, if they're not a fit, that's a different conversation, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're really talking about those people who are actually a fit. Your brain is just making them not a fit to protect you, so that you can protect or self-protect or self-soothe because it feels like scary or uncomfortable. And I think that is a way so many entrepreneurs leave money on the table. This is kind of a side tangent. And then Tiffany, I didn't forget, you had a thought question in there that I was going to go back to. And if any of y'all have other questions, I've been going long, y'all. Thank you for hanging with me. I was chatting with another client in my one of my coaching programs last week, and we were just talking about, I think the other thing that can happen is it's almost like, I think as business owners, because everyone here is heart-centered, you do have integrity. I think there's sometimes this thought that like in your messaging, in your copy, you almost have to articulate every little thing you do and problem you solve and thing you like process and thing you know how to do. And like the disclaimer for those 4 things you don't like to do or can't do as well or don't have the tools for, right? Anyone ever felt that way? And I think it comes from such a well-meant place of integrity. And oftentimes, I'll talk with clients just because they've also like invested in programs or in a course that promised them all these things and then like delivered none of those things. And so sometimes I think it's like, I don't ever want to make someone feel that way. I don't ever want someone to invest and like not get what they paid for. And so I think that pendulum can swing the other way if you are heart-centered and in integrity. And so I think it's just helpful to notice, like, am I doing that? Because I think that's the other place it can come from. Like, am I like so worried because I've had that experience, I don't want someone else to experience that? And if so, my reminder and invitation, there's two things there. This is like such a total side tangent, but I think it's really on topic. I think the first thing is, if you have that concern, if you're worried about that, you can just kind of know just by having that concern, you are someone who has integrity. You are someone who cares. You are someone who quite literally is not going to put something out into the world that isn't going to be delivering on what you said you like would. If anything, my guess is if that is your concern and your mindset, and you're someone who's experienced that, is if anything, you're someone who over delivers to the point of like, we need to make sure you're not over delivering to the point of burnout. Let me know if that makes sense. But I think that's just like a really great check-in. It's like, if I'm even having this concern or worry, I can know I'm not someone who has to worry about this. And then the other thing, and this is something I always, that I was chatting with a client about last week, is, and like, again, like people really don't need to know all those little details. It's not like in my website, I like talk about every little thing I support clients with on the back end. They need to know, like, macro, what are the problems you help them solve? Macro, what are the results you help them achieve? What are those challenges you're helping them overcome? What are those big picture results they get? And specific to them, but they don't need to know every little intricate piece of your process. That's not why people buy. Like, I have so many varied clients, and we work on, all of my calls are so varied in terms of the things we work on, and I don't need to like let every single person I work with know that. It wouldn't even make sense to them. What they need to know is, your people just need to know, can you help me with my problem? Like, can you help me? You got me with this? Can you help me get the solution I need? And so I think those are just two easy things to remember there. So let me know if that makes sense. I want to answer Tiffany's question, and then I will give us a quick recap here. I think those are the main, there was Tiffany, then I'll answer your question. This was the last thing I wanted to offer in terms of not pushing clients away. So this was the last piece here. So the other way I see this come up, and I know I'm throwing a lot at you all today, but this feels like such an important topic. So I hope all of this is helpful for you. So the other way I really see this happen, and the other thing that I think can be mindful to pay attention to, is I think it comes up with the results, where a lot of times people are pushing clients away because they're so worried, again, that they're not gonna be able to deliver on those results that they're promising. And so I think a really helpful reframe here, and something that is really important to remember in selling and in business, is when you're speaking to those results, you're always speaking to what's possible. And we're not speaking to what's possible in like a shitty, fake way, but you're always speaking to the potential if someone's showing up, like the potential of what's possible in your work. We're never like, unless you actually are promising, but I know in my work, I know for most of my clients, like they're never promising, because that would actually be out of integrity, right? Like a promise, like if you're a service provider, most service providers, it's you and someone else, or you and another business. All you can be responsible for, all you can make a promise around is you, what you're showing up for, and how you're showing up for someone's investment, right? When someone hires me, all I can promise is what I'm going to show up for, how I will show up for their investment, and like my half that I'm going to bring to the table. I'm in a relationship. All I can promise is how I'm going to show up in that relationship. What is my 100% in that relationship? What is my 100% with my clients? Does that make sense? So with clients, my promise to them is I will always show up 100% for their investment. With my partner, I will always show up 100% for my half of the relationship. What I will not do, and what I cannot do, is try to overcompensate and show up for someone else's 100% in my personal relationship, or try to show up 100% for my client's responsibility in the relationship. Not only is that impossible, it also does my clients a really big disservice, just like it would do your clients a really big disservice. And so I think that's a really helpful reminder. And then to remember, so when you're talking about results, you're talking about possibility, not promises. And what the promise is what is your 100% to help support them to so they can show up with their 100% to reach what is possible for them in terms of those results. And I think that can be a very helpful reframe, so that when you're on a call, you're not pushing clients away because you're taking on 200% of the responsibility. And I think for my heart-centered clients, that is one of the really common things that will come up mindset-wise that will have them push away clients, is they're taking on 200%, right? They're taking on their 100%, and I need to make sure this other person, I'm gonna do their 100%, or somehow I can guarantee their 100% of the relationship. And that's just impossible. I'll give an example there, and then I'm gonna go back to Tiffany's question, and then we will wrap this up. Thank you all for hanging with me so long. So I think a good example of that is fitness, right? If I were a fitness coach or a health coach, and we were going to, I'm on a Peloton kick right now, y'all. So let's say we were gonna do spin training. As a coach, I could speak to the results in terms of you're gonna get this fast, you're gonna get this in shape, you're gonna be able to do the 45-minute class and hit this output in terms of the output you're putting out. What I'm speaking to is the possibility. I can't promise, no matter how amazing a Peloton instructor and coach I am, I cannot promise that everyone is going to get the same results. That would literally be out of integrity. But it would also be out of integrity for me to not speak to what's possible. And then what I could promise is, and what I'm gonna promise as your Peloton instructor coach, is I'm gonna show up 100% for you. I'm gonna bring my all, I'm gonna make sure I'm doing my research in the back end, I'm gonna pick the best playlist, I'm gonna know how to train you so that you can reach your maximum output. And then I'm going to hold you to a high standard for you to show up 100%. And if we both show up for our 100%, sky's the fucking limit. But what I'm not gonna do is take on, as your Peloton instructor, I'm not gonna take on 200% and somehow get into your home and ride the bike for you and expect you to get the results. A, that would be shortcutting your results. And B, that would be impossible and quite silly. But you wouldn't get any of the benefits if I hopped on the bike and did the workout for you. Right? Does that make sense? And so it's the same thing here. I think it's just that reminder, because I think that's a way a lot of people push clients away, is by taking that 200% responsibility. And just the simple reframe there is, what is your 100% responsibility, and how can you articulate that to people, and then give them that gift of holding them to the standard of them showing up for their 100%. And I think that will help you not push so many clients away, because you're expecting yourself to show up for and carry the whole world. Courtney says, interesting about taking on 200%. So true, isn't it? Oh, we could maybe I need to do a whole live on this. I feel there's so much there, because I think this is something, and particularly my people are heart-centered. I'm heart-centered. This is, I will say this is some of the work I've had to do personally. I am such a natural, I'm a caretaker, I'm a coach, I'm heart-centered. I want to help people. And I think if you are that kind of person, there is a tendency, and I don't want to call it codependency, because I don't think it's that. I think it's just the caretaker thing, where there's such a want, especially in business, and especially if you're feeling insecure, where it's if I can just do the 200%, I can erase the discomfort. I can make everything okay. And I think the work for all of us as heart-centered entrepreneurs, how do we get back in our lane and focus on our 100%, and then hold people to the standard of their 100%? And how do we hold them when they're not showing up for their 100%, and see that we can show up our 100%, and that is you doing your job. That doesn't mean they're a bad ideal client or you need to push them away. But what power is that when you can stay in your 100% when someone else is showing up 50%, to not go in then and try to erase that discomfort for them and do that 50% for them? It's a whole nother conversation, but I think that's when some real magic happens in coaching, and really for anyone who's a service provider. Okay, I'm not gonna go down the rabbit hole there, because we'll be on for another 45 minutes. I'm going to, if any of you have any questions, reflections, throw them at me, and I wanna respond to Tiffany's comment. She said, where she runs into trouble is a sales call. I feel I'm not good enough at sales to convince a client to book with me. So, and we'll definitely have more conversations on sales, but I thought this was just a really great comment, Tiffany, and just something that felt important to speak to, because I do think that's a little bit just another way we can accidentally or unintentionally push those potential clients away. Is I think just the two things that jump out to me is the story of I'm not good enough at sales, and then I've got to convince people. And Tiffany, I'm not saying that's specifically what you're thinking, but that's what jumps out for me here. And I thank you for this comment. And I think just a reframe for everyone here is how can you get into the mindset that you are a business owner who is good enough and good enough at selling and good enough at what you're doing, and remembering that sales is not about convincing. Great sales, heart-centered sales, the approach I teach my clients, is not about convincing anyone of anything. In fact, that is like yucky bro marketing that I think is so gross. Heart-centered sales is all about helping someone get clear on what it is they want and helping them to make a decision to move towards that thing. That is it. And if you are here and you're heart-centered, amazing thing is that's really so much more about listening and what we were talking about earlier. And so I think this is a really great thing here, because if you can get into that mindset of like, oh, all I have to do is help them figure out what they want, and if my solution helps them solve their problem, like that's really what the sales conversation is about, versus I now need to try to convince them. I think what you'll find is that also helps get out of the mindset of I'm not good enough at sales, or I have to convince someone, so that you can listen and actually sell effectively, so you're not pushing clients away. Let me know if that makes sense, Tiffany, if that reframe helps, or for anyone else listening. So just kind of as an overall thought for everyone here, I think that is just a helpful way to approach sales conversations, so you're not getting in your own way, because anytime you're getting in your own way, you're unintentionally pushing people away. The less you're getting in your own way for everyone here, again, just kind of bringing it back to the beginning of our conversation, the more you're inviting people in, because you have to be more confident and more sold on what it is you're selling than the person you're selling to create that safety and trust for them. So that goes with your sales conversations as well. If you can feel great on those sales conversations, you create that safety for the person you're talking to, so they don't have to now also create more safety to feel safe investing in your work. Tiffany says, nope, I think you nailed it. Okay, yay. So happy to hear it. Okay, those are all the things, you all. I'll give a quick recap, and then I will also make sure to drop a link, because we have a free training coming up in 2 weeks, and I want to make sure to invite all of you. But kind of as a general recap here, Tiffany says it makes sense. It's a bit of what we talked about before, about being desperate. That makes complete sense. And I think it's just helpful there to see where it's like, that's the mindset behind it, versus you actually need to convince someone, or you're not actually good at sales. And I think that can be a very helpful shift, where it's like, oh, it's just this stuff popping up. It's not actually that I don't know how to do this. So thank you for that, Tiffany. So as a recap, this is not a recap, it's a recap. As a recap, y'all, for those of you watching now and picking up later, we talked about this whole idea of, are you unintentionally pushing clients away, and some simple shifts to book more paying clients. And the reminder there, to some things to check in with, is taking a look at the mindset, some of the thoughts. Are you trying to protect yourself from that discomfort, from that rejection, from not being able to deliver on results because you're worried you're an imposter? Just have that check-in, because if there's anything you're trying to protect yourself from, there's a good chance you're unintentionally pushing clients away. And then we walked through a few of those common ways that you might be unintentionally pushing clients away, and just a few of those reframes, really simple reframes and shifts you can make, so that you're showing up from that place of power and enoughness to kind of drop all the hurdles for your potential clients. So taking a look at like the difference between high and impossible standards, taking a look at, do you have an ideal client, or do you have a possible unicorn perfect client you're looking at? And then some of those other things, like, are you trying to convince people not to work with you? Let's see, what were some of those otherwise? Are you overqualifying your clients? And just taking a look at your copy and your sales conversations, and really saying, are you listening, and are you speaking to the problem you solve, versus kind of going all over the map because you're trying to say like, here are all the things I don't do. So some easy places to check in there. If you're watching on the replay, feel free to share questions, reflections. And then before I let you all go, we have a free training coming up in 2 weeks. So I have to remember the title here, because we just put out all the copy for this, but it's the real truth behind my 88K sales month. And I'm breaking down the 5 biggest mistakes I made, so that you don't have to make them, and kind of giving you the tips and tools behind them. Because what I find is, like, we talk all these numbers online, and I really want to break down some of the truth, which is, I am here today because I have failed forward in a very beautiful way. I have made mistakes along the way that I have, I don't really believe in mistakes. I don't really believe in failing. I believe everything is an opportunity for growth and a way to learn. And I also believe in learning from other people's mistakes. And I want to share some of those with you. I think there are some things I did at the start that I had to learn the hard way, and I want to give you all the learning curve around that. So I'm going to go through 5 of the biggest mistakes I made at the start of my business and some of those shifts and things that I learned so that you don't have to learn them and you can just steal those lessons from me to speed up your growth process for making more money in your business. Stephanie said I may be overqualifying. But that's so, Stephanie, that's such great awareness, right? I think it's just a great thing. If you think you might be overqualifying, I would just check in with why am I overqualifying? Like, what's the concern there? I think that's interesting because that's probably the mindset work or the fear to play with. And then just to see how can I make it a little easier for people to say yes to me. So I think that might just be a helpful thing there. I'll leave a link for the free training. I would love to have you all. I love my trainings. I think they're pretty freaking awesome. And Stephanie, and for everyone, I am going to leave you with a thought just popped into my brain that is going to sound so counterintuitive, but I think it might be a really helpful one for everyone here. It kind of goes in line with this whole idea of like making mistakes and failing forward and being okay with that. When you're pushing clients away, oftentimes it's because you're trying to self-protect. And when we're trying to self-protect, it's like we're trying to erase. It's like, when you like try to protect kids so much so they never get hurt and then they miss out on those opportunities to learn. And what I would offer everyone here is all of those ways you're trying to self-protect, it's because like you're worried you're gonna fall on your face somehow. And if you fall on your face, I promise you, as someone who's fallen on her face a whole lot in business, a whole lot in my whole life, sometimes is the best fucking thing that could happen to you. I've had clients sometimes go through challenging times and in a loving way, I'm like, this is the best thing that could have possibly happened to you because that is where you learn the most. And for anyone here, it's like all the things you're trying to protect yourself from, like what is the actual worst thing that could happen? You're going to get a client that isn't a fit and you have to refund them. You know what I mean? Like, is that like that's probably the worst that could happen or someone says no. I mean, I know it's not like fun, but it's not like the end of the world. And so I think just starting to think like, what's the thing you're trying to protect yourself from? And starting to see like, even if it happened, like there's probably some awesome freaking lessons in that where you actually will have real information in terms of what you need to qualify for versus like all the made up reasons and all the made up things you're trying to qualify against. And like worst case of whatever will happen probably isn't even going to be that bad of a situation. Stephanie says, I was told to, LOL. Well, I'm not gonna like, I don't know the whole back end of your business. If there's someone supporting you, I don't want to mess with anyone's, like we're having a live stream here where that's the beauty of one-on-one work. You get the specification to your business and what's actually going on. So Stephanie, I don't know what's going on in your business, but I do think it's just interesting to see like, is that what's serving me right now? Qualifying clients, awesome thing. I pre-qualify clients, but there's a difference between pre-qualifying and overqualifying. There's a difference between knowing what you want in a partner and having a checklist that's impossible. And so I think it's just kind of checking in with what is that. There's a difference between, I'm going to use the dating analogy again, like having standards for dating and having boundaries and having impossible hurdles you expect people to jump through to prove to you that, they want you so that you can feel safe. And I think it's just like, it's those fine lines and just seeing where are you on that fence? Are you doing this? Or are you just saying like, let's just see if this is really a fit and come on in? Two different things. Do you have the tightrope with like 2 people on the bar and like you're trying to keep people out? Or is like the bar full and you need to have the tightrope up? Tiffany says, thanks, Kim. All right, I love you all. I am going to let you all go because I need to go have some dinner. We have been live for over an hour. I love you, love you, love you. Thank you for hanging. I will see you all next week and in a few weeks for our training as well.